Okay, so imagine this for a second. You wake up, it's pitch black, you're in this small tent, middle of the East African savanna, stars like you wouldn't believe, cool breeze, and then you hear it. Lions roaring, maybe like a few hundred yards away. It's an intense way to start the day, but it's also our jumping off point for this deep dive. We're talking about something really fundamental.
Yeah.
How our bodies actually burn energy.
Exactly. And our goal today really is to cut through all the noise surrounding human metabolism, energy expenditure, what it means for health, for weight, even our whole evolutionary story. Because honestly, so much of what people think they know is, well, it's often too simple or sometimes just plain wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're definitely going to be challenging some of that conventional wisdom today. This deep dive is all about how human metabolism really works, based on some pretty amazing cutting-edge research. Especially those studies with hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza people down in Tanzania. We're pulling a lot from Herman Pontzer's fantastic book, Burn. Lots of surprising stuff in there, actionable insights too.
Right. We want to give you a clearer picture of what scientists are just now starting to fully grasp about these incredibly dynamic, adaptable metabolic engines we all have. You'll see our bodies are, they're products of millions of years of evolution. They weren't engineered like some machine.
Okay, so let's get into the basics then. Metabolism. What is it really?
Yeah.
At its core, it's basically all the chemical reactions happening inside you just to keep you alive. And energy, well, that's the currency, isn't it? The currency of life. Nothing happens without it. Your body's got something like, 37 trillion cells, each one humming away like a tiny factory every single second. And together, they burn enough energy every day to boil, get this, 8 gallons of ice water. And here's the bit that really got me. Every single ounce of you, of living human tissue, burns 10,000 times more energy each day than an ounce of the sun.
That comparison is just wow, isn't it? It really hammers home how incredibly active our cells are, how much energy this internal machinery demands just constantly to keep us going. Now, we talk about calories all the time, right? But the calories on food labels, those are actually kilocalories, kcal. So 1,000 calories, it's like saying kilo for kilometer. The actual power unit inside your cells is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Think of them like tiny rechargeable batteries. They cycle, get recharged over 3,000 times a day to power everything. And the places making most of this ATP, the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, little organelles living inside your cells, and they have their own 2 billion year evolutionary history. It's amazing.
3,000 cycles a day. That's staggering. So where does all this energy come from to power these ancient little batteries? Well, every single bit of you, bone, muscle, brain, kidneys, everything, it's all built from bits of food you've eaten, reassembled. And the energy comes from that food too, obviously. Mostly from 3 main things, the macronutrients. First up, carbohydrates. Carbs. They've been the main fuel for primates, including us, for like 65 million years. Think wild tubers, honey, like the Hadza eat. Then you've got fats, incredibly dense energy source, 255 kilocalories an ounce. That's like jet fuel territory, more energy dense than nitroglycerin even. And finally, proteins, the building blocks essential for structure.
And your body is really smart about handling these. Carbs get broken down into sugars, mainly glucose. Now, if you eat something with lots of fiber, like a whole orange, that slows down how fast the sugar hits your blood compared to, say, orange juice. No fiber there. Insulin then steps in, stores extra glucose, first as glycogen, kind of like a short-term reserve in your muscles and liver once those are full. Any more excess gets stored as fats and proteins. They get broken down too into the basic parts, and eventually everything can be converted into that ATP energy currency. And here's a really cool part. The carbon and oxygen atoms from your food, they become carbon dioxide, CO2, and you breathe them out. The hydrogen atoms, they combine with oxygen to make water, H2O. So basically, you literally exhale your food.
Wow. Yeah. You breathe out your lunch. Yeah. That's kind of poetic, actually. Okay, so that's the engine and the fuel. But what makes us, as humans, so different? You mentioned we're evolutionary freaks. Apparently, our whole life history, how fast we grow, reproduce, age, die, is way off compared to other animals. We're in slow motion. I mean, if we live like a typical mammal our size, we did puberty before age 2, dead by 25, women having babies every year. It's just wild to picture. Primates generally are slower, yeah. But for ages, the thinking was it was because we have slow metabolisms, low BMR basal metabolic rate, the energy burned just staying alive. But that's not it. No, that turned out to be wrong. What's really going on involves evolutionary trade-offs. It's fascinating. So humans, we have these huge brains, right? But compared to other apes, our livers and our guts are proportionally smaller. And the energy we save by having these smaller, less expensive organs, it almost perfectly pays for the massive energy cost of our big brains. It's often called the brains for guts idea. You can see the contrast. If you look at, say, orangutans, they have incredibly slow lives and a really slow metabolic rate.
Yeah.
That's thought to be an adaptation because food in their Indonesian rainforest homes can be super unpredictable. It means they bounce back from disasters really slowly. We took a different path.
A different path. And part of that path, which just seems crazy when you first hear it, is that we humans actually burn more energy each day, about 20% more than chimps and bonobos, our closest relatives. And even weirder, maybe, is that we burn only about half the calories of other placental mammals our size. So a typical mammal our weight might burn, 5,000 kilocalories a day or more, but we're usually down in the 2,500 to 3,000 range. That's a massive difference. It is a huge difference, and this discovery is really central to what some call the metabolic revolution. The big change, the innovation that really altered our metabolism and our whole evolutionary destiny wasn't just what early hominins ate, it was the food they gave away. See, other apes, they hardly ever share food. But early members of our genus, Homo, they started foraging for more than they needed themselves. And crucially, they shared the leftovers. The sharing wasn't just, being nice. It boosted the energy available for everyone. It fueled the bigger brains, the more active lives, bigger families, all the stuff that makes us human. It let us afford to burn more energy overall each day.
Sharing food is a metabolic strategy. That's brilliant. And then fire. You can't talk about human energy without talking about fire, right? Around 500,000 years ago, maybe earlier, we started controlling it. And cooking. That changed everything. Makes food easier to chew, breaks down proteins, makes starches digestible. I mean, you get double the calories from a cooked potato versus a raw one. Fire basically supercharged our diet.
Yeah.
Less energy spent digesting meant even more energy freed up for bigger brains and having more kids.
Exactly. It effectively turned us into a pyrobiological species. Pontzer's term is great. Homo energeticus. A species defined by energy.
Homo energeticus. I like that.
And then you fast forward. Agriculture comes along, then industrialization. Each step brings this massive increase in external energy use. Domestication of plants and animals was huge. Think about draft animals, one ox, doing the work of 10 people. That's an energy windfall. It led straight to a fertility boom. Early farmers, their mothers had about 2 more kids than hunter-gatherer mothers. Then industrialization hits, powered by fossil fuels. Just an explosion of external energy. Look at the contrast. A Hadza adult might get 1,000, maybe 1,500 kilocalories for every hour they spend foraging. A worker in the U.S., depending on the job, they can acquire over 20,000 kilocalories worth of resources per hour of wage work. And all this cheap external energy, it made food energy denser, and it made processed foods packed with added sugars, oils super abundant and dirt cheap.
Which brings us right to the issue of weight and health today, and that armchair engineer's view of metabolism you mentioned. The simple idea, exercise more, burn more calories, lose weight. Straight line, easy. But you're saying new research using this fancy doubly labeled water method shows the view is, well, badly wrong. That's a strong claim.
It is strong, but the evidence is really compelling. This is where the idea of constrained daily energy expenditure comes in, and it's deeply counterintuitive for most people. Studies keep showing it. You look at the Hadza, the Shuar kids in the Amazon, the Semeni farmers, groups living incredibly active lives, the Hadza averaging like 16,000 steps a day, 5 hours of physical activity. You'd think they'd be burning way more calories than sedentary Westerners, right? But their total daily energy expenditure, it's basically identical, or maybe just slightly higher. It's astonishing. Even studies looking at exercise programs find this, like one where women train for a half marathon for a year, running 25 miles a week. Their daily energy burn only went up by about 120 kilocalories, way, way less than the simple calories in, calories out math would predict.
Wait, hang on. So you're telling me a Hadza hunter-gatherer, out there walking miles, digging tubers, maybe chasing game, burns roughly the same total number of calories in a day as me, saying you're talking to a microphone. How is that even possible? That turns everything upside down. So what on earth does this mean for trying to lose weight then?
It really does flip the script, doesn't it? Your body is incredibly good at adapting. It's efficient. So instead of just ramping up the total burn indefinitely when you get more active, your body starts to reallocate its energy budget. Exercise signals your body to spend less energy on other things. Things like chronic, low-grade inflammation, or maybe an overactive stress response system, even dialing back on some reproductive hormone production. It squeezes out those costs to pay for the activity. And that reallocation, that's where all the amazing health benefits of exercise come from. Better mood, less stress, stronger immune system. But for weight loss, if the total energy burned is so tightly constrained, so hard to budge, well, the research points pretty clearly. We'd be better off battling obesity by focusing on the amount of energy we eat. diet becomes key.
Wow. Okay, so exercise isn't about significantly boosting the total calories burned day to day. It's about changing how that energy budget is spent, leading to better health. But that makes diet the main driver for weight management. Still, you hear constantly about how vital exercise is. So if it's not for burning tons more calories, what's the real magic? Why is it so essential?
That's exactly the right question. And the answer is exercise is absolutely crucial for health. It keeps you happier, healthier, and living longer. No question. The reason it's so good for you is precisely because of this constraint. It forces your body to make healthy trade-offs in how it spends energy. Now, your body, especially your brain, like the hypothalamus, has these incredibly sophisticated systems. They're exquisitely tuned to try and match the energy you burn with the energy you eat. So if you start burning more through activity, your body often compensates by making you hungrier. People who burn more tend to eat more. It tries to balance the books. And here's another thing that surprises people. When you adjust for body size, people who are obese actually burn just as much energy as thin people. Their metabolism isn't inherently slow. The issue is the energy intake side of the equation.
Intake. Which leads us straight into the chaos of the diet wars, doesn't it? Paleo, vegan, keto, low-fat, high-carb. Everyone seems absolutely certain their way is the one true ancestral diet. It really reminds you of that Dunning-Kruger thing, right? The people most certain about diets our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate are people with little training or expertise.
It's a perfect description because when you actually look at the real evidence archaeology, studies of modern hunter-gatherers, genetics, the picture's super consistent. Humans evolved as flexible, opportunistic omnivores. We ate what was around. Usually a mix of plants and animals, often lots of honey when available. You look at groups like the Hadza, Tsimane, Shuar. Their diets are often 65% or more carbohydrates, less than 20% fat typically, wild tubers, fruits, honey. And think about the Inuit, high-fat diet, traditionally. But genetics show natural selection has actually worked against ketosis in those populations. Their bodies aren't optimized for constantly burning fat for fuel despite the diet. It just busts so many myths.
So all that fighting is kind of pointless, meaning fundamentally is a calorie a calorie.
From a physics perspective, yes, of course it is. A calorie is a unit of energy. That's the definition.
And the science says pretty clearly, all diets that lead to weight loss work the same basic way. They get you to consume fewer calories than you expend. So the massive challenge isn't finding the perfect macronutrient ratio. It's finding a way of eating that you can actually stick with long term.
Exactly. And why are modern diets so hard to stick to? A big part of it is our food environment. These modern processed foods, they're engineered with combinations of sugar, fat, salt that are just, well, too delicious, hyper palatable. They hijack our brain's reward pathways, making us want more, even when we don't physically need the energy or nutrients. But they often don't make us feel full or satisfied for long. This flavor engineering is a huge business, designing foods that basically guarantee you'll overeat them. So the solution isn't some magic formula, it's about shifting focus. Prioritize foods high in fiber and protein, things that actually fill you up and provide nutrients. And consciously try to avoid those ultra-processed foods that are basically designed to prod us to overconsume.
Right. Focus on real whole foods. Makes sense. Okay, let's circle back fully to exercise then. We know it's not primarily for calorie burning in the weight loss sense. But you mentioned sedentary people get diseases like heart disease, diabetes that are virtually unheard of in hunter-gatherers. And that weird fact about apes in zoos, lazy like many humans, 5,000 steps a day, but they don't get our diseases. Why is that?
Because their bodies, their whole physiology evolved over millions of years expecting that level of activity or lack thereof. They're tuned for it. Our bodies, human bodies, evolved expecting much, much more daily movement. When we don't get it, things start to go wrong. That's the mismatch.
So that constrained energy expenditure idea, that's the key to why exercise works for health.
Exactly. It forces the beneficial trade-offs. When you exercise regularly, your body takes energy away from potentially harmful processes, chronic inflammation, excessive stress hormones, maybe even some aspects of reproduction if energy is tight, and redirects it to fuel the activity and the recovery and repair afterwards. That's why you see improved mood, less anxiety, a better stress response. Athletes tend to have smaller stress hormone spikes that disappear faster. You also get sharper thinking, better immune function. It's a whole cascade of positive effects driven by that energy reallocation.
Okay, but there's a limit, right? You hear about athletes pushing too hard. Overtraining syndrome.
Yes, absolutely. There's definitely a dark side if you go to extremes. Really high workloads, think Tour de France cyclists burning 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 kilocalories a day. That level of demand can start cutting into essential functions. That's when you see overtraining. The immune system gets suppressed, injuries heal slowly, you feel exhausted all the time, reproductive systems can shut down, lower testosterone in men, irregular periods in women. And the crucial thing to understand there is the fix isn't usually to just eat more calories. It's to reduce the training load. Your body is signaling it can't sustain that level of energy output without sacrificing essential systems.
So for most of us, not elite athletes, what's the sweet spot? How much should we aim for?
Well, looking back at our evolutionary template, the hunter-gatherers, like the Hadza, they averaged about 5 hours of physical activity a day. Within that, probably 1 to 2 hours was moderate to vigorous. Think brisk walking, jogging, digging, carrying. That translates to roughly 15,000 steps a day. And that level lines up incredibly well with modern health data. Studies show getting an hour or more of moderate and vigorous activity daily can cut your risk of dying prematurely by something like 80%. Even that study of postal workers in Glasgow, the ones walking routes that hit 15,000 steps a day, they were practically free of heart problems compared to the desk-bound workers. So the good news is you don't need to move to the savannah. That level of activity is achievable for many people.
15,000 steps. An hour or so of decent activity. That's a clear target. Okay, but what about truly extreme endurance, pushing beyond the daily limits? You mentioned those cyclists, ocean rolls like Bryce Carlson burning thousands and thousands of calories day after day. How do they manage that if daily expenditure is constrained? It seems contradictory.
Good question. That's where a different constraint comes into play for events lasting days, weeks, or longer. It's not the muscles or the overall daily budget anymore, it's the gut. Your digestive system simply has a maximum rate at which it can break down food and absorb the calories. For humans, that limit seems to be around 2.5 times your basal metabolic rate. For most people, that works out to maybe 4,000 to 5,000 kilocalories per day that you can actually absorb no matter how much you eat. So during those incredibly long, demanding events, athletes are inevitably losing weight because they can't possibly eat enough to keep up with the burn. Their gut is the bottleneck. The brain monitors this weight loss, interprets it as starvation, and ramps up feelings of fatigue to try and slow things down. It's a gut-brain connection limiting long-term output.
Fascinating. Our own digestive system sets the ultimate endurance limit. And that idea of metabolic limits, it ties into reproduction too, doesn't it? Giving birth is obviously a huge metabolic challenge for the mother. And you mentioned modern diets, and less activity might actually make pregnancy less energetically demanding than it used to be, potentially leading to bigger babies, maybe more C-sections in places like the U.S. compared to somewhere like the Hadza.
That's a really interesting area of research, yes. The idea that our modern lifestyle might be reducing the work of pregnancy in some ways, which could paradoxically make the final event, birth, more difficult if the baby is larger relative to the mother's physique, which hasn't had the same physical conditioning.
It all comes back to energy.
It really does. And that brings us to the really big picture for Homo energeticus. It's not just that we evolved this higher internal energy burn, it's that we figured out how to harness external energy on a massive scale. Fire, draft animals, and then the game changer, fossil fuels. We've built our entire modern world on this external energy. Huge benefits, absolutely. Lifting billions out of poverty, technological marvels. But it's also created these enormous and, frankly, unsustainable dependencies.
Unsustainable is the word. When you look at fossil fuel reserves, estimates are like 50 to maybe 110 years left at current rates. That's potentially within our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes. It threatens everything: food production, transport.
Exactly.
And that's before you even factor in climate change, which is the direct result of burning all that external energy.
Yeah.
It's a massive challenge we've created for ourselves.
It is a profound one. But the key is we have this enormous, intelligent, creative brain. The same brain that got us here has to get us out. Solutions are complex, obviously.
Okay.
Much greater energy efficiency is crucial. But also, we need to consciously engineer out these hyper-palatable, processed, freakish foods we've created. Maybe through policies like taxes on unhealthy stuff, maybe through better education. And we absolutely have to tackle sedentarism head-on. Our bodies are screaming for movement, evolve for action, yet now the average person can earn a living sitting completely still. That's a dangerous evolutionary mismatch we need to address.
It's quite a thought. We're the species that tamed fire, built cities, sent probes to Mars. Surely we have enough collective intelligence, enough foresight to manage our energy use more wisely, to ensure our own survival and the health of the planet.
That's the hope, isn't it? So, recapping our deep dive today, we've seen human metabolism isn't some simple input-output machine. It's dynamic, it's evolved, it's full of trade-offs. Understanding this helps us get past the simplistic diet fads. And it shows us the true power of exercise isn't just burning calories, but fundamentally reallocating how our body spends its energy budget for optimal health.
Right. And the takeaway on diet seems clear. Pretty much all diets work for weight loss if you stick to them because they all cut calories somehow. So the best approach is finding a way of eating based on real, whole foods, especially fiber and protein, that leaves you satisfied on fewer calories and helps you avoid those tempting processed foods. And for exercise, unless you're pushing into that extreme athlete territory, the simple answer for better health is usually just more movement.
Exactly. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. We are, arguably, the smartest, most creative species this planet has ever produced. We wield incredible technological power. The question now is, can we apply that intelligence, that creativity, to wisely manage both our deeply evolved biology and our vast external energy consumption to forge a truly sustainable and healthy future?